Why do intelligent people get trapped in toxic relationships? The answer doesn't lie in what's being said, but in what remains unspoken. Sigmund Freud discovered over a century ago that the unconscious speaks its own language, and this language reveals more about a person than 1,000 beautiful words ever could. Picture this scenario. You're on a first date, and everything seems perfect until the moment when your date says a seemingly harmless sentence, a sentence you completely overlook, a sentence that could determine your life for years to come. Freud called these expressions slips of the unconscious, signals from the deepest layers of the psyche that betray our true intentions. Today I'm going to reveal 6 sentences that work like X-rays, penetrating a person's character and exposing what they would never admit. These sentences are warning signs, and those who can recognize them can protect themselves from years of emotional devastation. The first warning sign is so subtle that 90% of people completely miss it, but once you know what to look for, you'll never overlook it again. If you want to continue exploring the mysteries of the human psyche, subscribe to this channel because the truth begins now. The first warning sign hides behind one of the most common sentences in interpersonal conflicts. That's not what I meant. And then, when you hear these words, all alarm bells should ring, because Sigmund Freud recognized that the unconscious never lies. Imagine this. Your partner makes a hurtful comment about your appearance, intelligence, or family. When you react, they immediately respond, "That's not what I meant." You're reading something into it that isn't there. In this moment, something fascinating and dangerous happens. The person uses one of the most powerful defense mechanisms of the human psyche, denial. Freud discovered in his 1925 analysis negation, a revolutionary principle. When the unconscious speaks, it often does so through the opposite of what is consciously claimed. "That's not what I meant" translates in the language of the unconscious to, "That's exactly what I meant, but I don't want to take responsibility for it." Why does this mechanism work? The superego, our inner moral judge, forbids us from directly expressing our true, often destructive thoughts. So they sneak out through detours, through seemingly spontaneous remarks, followed by immediate denial. The attack has been launched, the wound inflicted, but conscious responsibility is rejected. People who regularly say, "That's not what I meant," find themselves in an internal conflict between their aggressive impulses and their self-image as a good person. They want to hurt, but also want to be loved. This split makes them unpredictable and emotionally dangerous. The insidious thing about this warning sign is that it flips reality upside down. Suddenly, they're not the problem, your oversensitivity is. You become the one who misinterprets, while the actual aggressor stands as the misunderstood party. Freud called this reversal into the opposite, a primitive but effective defense mechanism. Recognize this sentence for what it is, a confession. The person has just shared their true feelings with you while simultaneously trying to distance themselves from them. Their spontaneous, uncensored words are the truth. The follow-up explanation is the lie. Have you ever noticed this pattern in someone close to you? If so, then prepare yourself for the second warning sign, a sentence that's even more subtle and can cause even more emotional damage. The second warning sign disguises itself as concern for your emotional health. You're too sensitive. But behind this seemingly harmless diagnosis hides one of the most destructive attacks on your psyche. Freud would expose this sentence as classic projection, and you should understand it as an emotional declaration of war. Picture this. You tell your partner that you feel hurt by their behavior. Instead of an apology or a conversation, you get, "You're just too sensitive." Other people wouldn't get upset over something like this. In this moment, a psychological masterpiece of manipulation occurs. Your legitimate feelings are pathologized, transformed into your personal defect. Freud recognized that people project onto others what they themselves cannot bear. Those who accuse others of oversensitivity are usually emotionally immature themselves and incapable of dealing with others' feelings. Their own emotional numbness becomes the declared norm, while healthy sensitivity is defamed as weakness. What makes this sentence so dangerous? It attacks the foundation of your emotional self-perception. Sensitivity isn't a disease, it's a sign of functioning empathy and emotional intelligence. People who accuse others of being too sensitive usually have difficulty perceiving or expressing their own feelings. Freud described this as affect isolation, the separation of thoughts and feelings as a primitive defense mechanism. Such people intellectualize everything because they fear the power of their own emotions. Their coldness becomes the standard by which everyone else should be measured. The insidious part, this sentence makes you the problem, even though the real problem is your counterpart's emotional immaturity. You start doubting your own perception. Am I really too sensitive? That's exactly the goal. You should stop articulating your needs and ignore your injuries. People who regularly accuse others of oversensitivity are emotionally immature partners. They can't take responsibility for the pain they cause, so they make the victim the perpetrator. Freud called this identification with the aggressor, but here the victim becomes the alleged aggressor against their own emotional health. Recognize this sentence as projection of emotional immaturity. Your sensitivity isn't the problem, it's your shield against emotional exploitation. Anyone who criticizes you for it isn't ready for a mature emotional connection. Have you ever started doubting your own emotional perception? Then wait until you see what the third sentence does to your understanding of relationships. It's even more manipulative. The third warning sign often comes on the first date and sounds like a warning about others, but is actually a warning about the person themselves. All my exes were crazy. When you hear this sentence, you're looking directly into the heart of one of the most fascinating and dangerous phenomena of the human psyche, the compulsion to repeat. Picture this. Your date tells you about past relationships. My first girlfriend was completely insane. The second was manipulative. The third had borderline personality disorder. Honestly, I always attract the crazy ones. You nod sympathetically and miss the biggest warning sign you'll ever encounter. Freud discovered that people are unconsciously programmed to repeat the same dysfunctional patterns over and over. The compulsion to repeat ensures that we relive the same conflicts, the same injuries, the same failed dynamics repeatedly until we consciously break them. Someone who claims all their exes were crazy isn't the innocent victim of a series of unfortunate coincidences. They're the common denominator in all these failed relationships. Freud would ask, what in this person always attracts people with psychological problems? Or more importantly, what in this person makes healthy partners crazy? The truth is that people who make such statements systematically externalize all responsibility for their relationship's failures. They've never learned to recognize their own destructive patterns. Instead, they project all problems onto their partners and remain in the role of the misunderstood, innocent victim. This makes them emotional vampires. They suck up their partner's psychic energy, drive them insane through manipulation, gaslighting, or emotional abuse, then present themselves as the victims of the unstable relationship. It's a perfect psychological cycle of self-deception. Freud recognized that the compulsion to repeat is often stronger than the desire for happiness. People prefer repeating familiar pain patterns to facing the fear of the unknown. Those who label all exes as crazy are afraid of the self-reflection that real growth would require. The dangerous thing about such people is that they don't learn from each failed relationship, but only become more skilled at hiding their destructive patterns. They collect evidence of their partner's instability while successfully repressing their own toxic contributions. When someone tells you that all their exes had psychological problems, ask yourself, am I ready to become the next crazy one in their collection? Because statistically, that's your most likely fate. Recognize this sentence for what it is, a self-diagnosis in disguise. The person is confessing that they're incapable of maintaining healthy relationships or taking responsibility for their role in interpersonal conflicts. Have you ever believed someone who claimed to only have difficult partners? The fourth sentence will shock you. It disguises control as care. The fourth warning sign is the perfect camouflage for manipulation. I'm only doing this for your own good. This sentence transforms control into apparent care and makes the controller into a selfless helper. Freud would recognize this as rationalization, one of the most sophisticated defense mechanisms of the human psyche. Imagine this. Your partner forbids you from contacting certain friends, controls your finances, or talks you out of your career dreams as unrealistic. When you protest, they respond, "I'm only doing this for your own good. I want to protect you from disappointment." Suddenly, you're no longer the victim of control, but the ungrateful recipient of care. Freud recognized that the superego, our inner moral judge, can justify our darkest impulses by transforming them into noble motives. People who want to control others can't admit their own power needs, so they package them as altruism. I'm not doing this for me, I'm doing it for you. This rationalization is doubly dangerous. It deceives both the victim and the perpetrator. The controller often believes in their noble motives themselves, while the victim begins interpreting control as proof of love. He cares about me so much that he wants to protect me from everything. Why is this mechanism so powerful? Because it appeals to our deepest emotional needs. Every person longs to be loved and protected. Manipulators use this longing to legitimize their control. They transform your natural needs into tools of your own oppression. Freud described this as turning against the self, a process where external coercion transforms into internal self-criticism. You begin not only accepting control, but criticizing yourself for resisting it. Maybe he's right. Maybe I really am too naive, too trusting, too unrealistic. The insidious thing about this warning sign is that it makes resistance into ingratitude. Anyone who resists control is portrayed not just as stubborn, but as ungrateful for the care. The natural reaction to restriction rebellion is pathologized as a sign of immaturity or self-destructiveness. People who regularly claim to act only for your good usually have a disturbed relationship with power and control. They can't admit their own needs for dominance, so they disguise them as selflessness. Their control becomes a sacrifice. Your resistance becomes the sin of ingratitude. Recognize this sentence for what it is: justification for violations of your autonomy. True love respects your freedom to choose, even if it includes the risk of mistakes. Control disguised as care isn't love, it's possession. Have you ever interpreted control as proof of love? The fifth sentence will show you how people avoid growth by presenting themselves as unchangeable. The fifth warning sign always comes when change is demanded. That's just how I am. This seemingly harmless sentence is actually a declaration of surrender to one's own growth. Freud would recognize this as fixation remaining stuck in an immature developmental stage, out of fear of the challenges of growing up. Picture this. You ask your partner to treat you more respectfully, be more punctual, or take more responsibility. The response, "That's just how I am. I can't change. Take me as I am or leave it." In this moment, your legitimate request for growth is reinterpreted as an unreasonable demand for self-denial. Freud discovered that the human psyche develops in phases, and sometimes people remain trapped in early narcissistic stages. Someone who says, "That's just how I am," has refused the fundamental task of adulthood, continuous work on one's personality. Instead, they declare their current weaknesses to be unchangeable character traits. This statement is a psychological lie. No human being is unchangeable. What's presented as character is usually unprocessed trauma, bad habits, or simply laziness. The person tells you, "I'm not ready to grow for this relationship. I expect you to adapt to my imperfections." This makes this sentence so destructive. It stops any dialogue about improvement in its tracks. Those who declare their problems as unchangeable nature make themselves untouchable to criticism and inaccessible to development. Meanwhile, the partner is burdened with all the adaptation work. Freud described such people as fixated, trapped in an early phase of psychosexual development, where the ego hasn't learned to deal with frustration and change requirements. They react to criticism like toddlers, defiantly, defensively, and with refusal to cooperate, particularly insidious. This sentence disguises itself as authentic self-acceptance. I'm being honest with myself and with you. I'm not selling you false hopes. Need-bity, but true self-acceptance includes willingness for further development. What's being sold here is stagnation as virtue. People who regularly say, "That's just how I am," are emotionally immature partners. They've never learned that love means work on yourself, on the relationship, on shared growth. Instead, they expect unconditional acceptance of their imperfections without being willing to change themselves. The tragic thing is that these people rob themselves of life's most beautiful experience, growing through love. Relationships are the most powerful catalysts for personal development. Those who use them only as confirmation of their already existing personality miss their transformative potential. Recognize this sentence for what it is: a refusal of the basic requirements of adulthood. Mature people know we're all constantly becoming. Those who claim to be finished have stopped living. Have you ever traded your own growth desires for the supposed honesty of unchangeability? The sixth and final sentence will prepare you for the most dangerous warning sign: the refusal of all communication. The sixth and most dangerous warning sign ends every dialogue before it can begin. You don't understand me. This sentence is the ultimate communication refusal, disguised as existential loneliness. Freud would recognize this as narcissism in its purest form, the inability for genuine interpersonal connection. Picture this. You try to discuss a problem in your relationship. You explain your feelings, your needs, your perspective. The response: "You just don't understand me. Nobody really understands me." In this moment, you're not only excluded from the conversation, you're degraded to an incapable observer of a supposedly unique soul. Freud discovered that primary narcissism is a state where the ego considers itself the center of the universe. People who chronically claim to be misunderstood have never completely overcome this infantile state. They seriously believe their inner world is so complex and unique that others could never possibly comprehend it. This attitude makes genuine intimacy impossible. Intimacy emerges through sharing vulnerability, through the risk of being understood or misunderstood. Those who claim from the outset that understanding is impossible refuse this risk. They remain in their narcissistic fortress and make the partner responsible for the isolation. The insidious thing about this warning sign is that it turns communication inability into romantic tragedy. I'm so profound, so complex, that ordinary people can't grasp my soul. The partner is declared a primitive being incapable of appreciating the narcissistic genius's depth. Freud recognized that people who permanently feel misunderstood have usually never learned to make themselves understandable. They confuse emotional opacity with depth, communication inability with complexity. Instead of working on their expressive abilities, they make others responsible for the failure of understanding. These people are emotionally parasitic. They expect others to do all the deciphering work while they themselves remain in mysterious unapproachability. At the same time, they complain about the loneliness they create through their own communication refusal. The tragic thing is that genuine narcissism isn't self-love, but its opposite. People who permanently claim to be misunderstood often have such a fragile self-image that they can't risk genuine communication. Because real communication means being seen as you truly are, with all weaknesses and contradictions. The sentence, "You don't understand me," is therefore a double lie. First, it implies the person has actually tried to be understood. Second, it attributes lack of empathy to the partner, although the real inability for empathy lies with the one who refuses to be understood. Recognize this sentence for what it is, the refusal of intimacy. People who permanently claim to be misunderstood aren't too deep for this world, they're too afraid for genuine connection. They choose the loneliness of narcissistic unapproachability over the vulnerability of love. Have you ever tried to understand someone who fundamentally presented themselves as incomprehensible? Then it's time for the crucial question. Which of these 6 warning signs have you overlooked in your own life? And what will you do about it now? If this content has brought you insight, if you've recognized patterns that could forever change your view of relationships, then I need your support. Click the subscribe button right now. Don't postpone it. This channel is dedicated to the deepest secrets of the human psyche, and I want you on this journey. Give this video a thumbs up. The like costs you nothing, but helps this channel immensely reach more people who need this information. It's literally one click that could change someone's life. In the comments, I want to know which city you're watching from. Write your city and country. I read every single comment and am fascinated to see how universal these psychological truths are. From New York to Los Angeles, from London to Sydney, from Toronto to Cape Town. And finally, share this video with at least one person who needs to hear this. It could be a friend who constantly complains about relationships, a sister who never understands why she attracts problematic people, or even someone you suspect needs this self-reflection.